700 years ago. The 13th century was the golden age of Scottish castles. A new generation of buildings was characterized by formidable defenses and grand residences. Above the site of Braveheart's famous victory at Stirling Bridge stands the most important of them all.
Stirling Castle was strategically the most important castle because whoever controlled that one controlled the north of Scotland.
If Braveheart is to expel the English from Scotland, this is the one castle he must take. But so far, the Scots have been unable to breach Stirling's awesome natural defenses.
It's probably the best location for a castle in Scotland, and you can see here just why it was so good. This is the edge of a volcanic sill that probably began to take shape, what, 350 million years ago, something like that?
The castle rock's sheer sides drop 250 feet to the plain below. They make Stirling a superb military base. But it is much more than just a fortress. Stirling represents Scotland's independence. To understand this symbolic power, we have to find out how it looked in Braveheart's time. And by doing that, we will discover perhaps the most surprising purpose behind the building of these castles. Stirling's physical qualities made it the perfect residence for Scotland's kings.
This was an extremely important royal castle. You can see how the buildings perch right on the very edge of the castle rock. That was probably the most prestigious part of the whole castle, so we think that it must always have been the site for the royal lodgings.
The royal family had lived here for over 200 years.
And it was very important to the kings to make sure that their buildings were absolutely in the height of fashion.
We now know that the fashion of Braveheart's time meant Stirling looked very different from how it does today.
Masonry was never meant to be seen as naked masonry. It was always covered over with a lime render, and it's very likely that several of the elements would have been picked out in quite rich colors.
It was a fashion that could be seen from miles around. This is what castles were for. As a royal castle, Stirling demonstrates it better than anywhere else.
We've got a tendency to think about castles as great fortresses, you're constantly in a state of armed preparedness for siege. But these places are status symbols. It's a way of demonstrating your wealth and your sophistication, and you're proclaiming that you are somebody that matters.
When Braveheart comes to take the castle, he has already struck the crucial blow. Almost the entire English garrison had been cut down by his army at Stirling Bridge. The few soldiers that remain are short of supplies and so terrified by Braveheart's unexpected victory that they surrender within days. Now Braveheart controls Stirling. He is able to chase the rest of the English out of Scotland. And yet, within the year, stung by defeat, King Edward of England brings his forces back to fight. Less than 10 miles from Stirling, near the town of Falkirk, he comes face to face with Braveheart. This time, it is the English king's radical new weapon that determines the outcome of the battle.
I mean, to be fair to him, for the first time, I think, really in British history, it's the longbow, the English longbow, that defeats the Scots. But it was this hail of arrows that the Scots could do nothing about.
Braveheart survives, but his fall from power is as rapid as his dramatic ascent the year before.
After the defeat of Falkirk, Wallace let go of the guardianship. His leadership rested on his military success, and obviously he didn't feel that he could lead the country if he couldn't win Falkirk.
But Braveheart doesn't give up his fight. He goes overseas to seek support for Scotland's independence.
The following year, he went into France, tried to get help from the French and also from the Pope.
But by 1304, the Scottish castles he had fought so hard for were falling back into English hands. Braveheart returns home to fight on the front line. But within months, he suffers betrayal by a friend and is captured by the English. A court in London finds him guilty of treason. Wallace is dragged through the streets to Smithfield, where he is hung, drawn, and quartered. It is a slow and agonizing death.
Where Wallace really scores, I think, is after his death, his terrible, gruesome and awful death, and that undying spirit of freedom that he never, ever gave up on.
It would take another 42 years for the Scots to finally win the Wars of Independence. But Braveheart's example had inspired a nation.
You can't compare anyone else in Scottish history to him. He's someone who rises from obscurity and becomes this national symbol of patriotism, of survival, and of Scotland.
William Wallace's lost world was the birthplace of Scottish independence. As Braveheart, he gave everything to preserve his nation's identity. 700 years on, that nation still honors his name.